Someone is reaching the point where pretending has become more painful than confessing. This younger person has tried to silence the pull towards you, but every attempt has only made it louder. They distract themselves, delete messages, avoid certain songs, and promise they will stop searching for signs from you. Then one memory returns, one sentence you said, one look they cannot forget, and the wall begins to crack again. What frightens them most is not simply the age difference, the timing, or what other people might say. Their deepest fear is that they will wait too long and lose the chance to tell you what this connection has become inside them. This is no longer a passing curiosity. It has entered their thoughts, their routines, and a future they rarely admit imagining. Something is changing now. Silence is no longer giving them control. It is exposing how much they care. And what they have been hiding may completely change how you interpret their distance. Take only what resonates and leave the rest. Tarot is not predicting your fate here. It is acting as a psychological mirror, revealing the emotional patterns, fears, attachments, and unspoken desires beneath the surface. And the first card shows why this bond has become impossible for them to ignore. The first card to emerge is the Devil. And before fear rushes in, understand what this symbol is truly revealing. In psychological terms, the Devil does not announce punishment or doom. It exposes attachment, temptation, fixation, and the emotional chains people continue holding, even when part of them longs to be free. This younger person has been trying to control the connection by refusing to name it, but denial has only given the feeling more power. They may check your profile, reread an old conversation, or replay the tone of your voice after everyone else has gone to sleep. A small interaction with you can occupy their mind for hours. They tell themselves they are simply curious, yet curiosity does not usually make someone type a message, delete it, rewrite it, and stare at the empty screen wondering whether honesty would ruin everything. If this reading resonates, support Astral Card Vault by liking the video and commenting, "I received this message." The chains shown in the Devil are important because they suggest a bond maintained through fear as much as desire. This person is afraid of judgment, the age difference, awkward questions, and rejection. But there is another fear beneath all of those. They fear losing access to you. Remaining silent allows them to preserve the connection as it currently exists, even while that silence slowly becomes its own form of pain. They may have imagined friends or family reacting before you have even had the chance to respond. They have built entire arguments against this relationship inside their head, then defeated every argument by remembering how calm, seen, or alive they feel around you. The conflict is exhausting because their mind keeps searching for an exit while their heart keeps returning to the same door. The Devil also asks where longing becomes self-imprisonment. This person may be realizing that hiding is no longer protecting anyone. It is only keeping them trapped in a cycle of watching, wondering, and rehearsing conversations that never happen. Their attachment is forcing an uncomfortable truth to the surface. They would rather risk clarity than remain haunted by possibility. Once someone understands that silence is the chain speaking becomes the first taste of freedom. And as that realization settles in, the Four of Wands appears like a threshold they can no longer pretend not to see. Psychologically, the Four of Wands represents the moment when someone stops imagining a connection as a dangerous disruption and begins seeing it as a place where they might actually belong. This younger person is no longer thinking only about what could go wrong. They are beginning to picture what might become possible if they allowed the truth to enter the space between you. That shift is creating movement inside them. Their thoughts are arriving faster than they can organize them. They may type a message, erase it, then reopen the conversation minutes later, because the need to reach you has not disappeared. They rehearse a phone call while driving, standing in the shower, or lying awake in the dark. They imagine how your voice might change when you realize why they have been distant. They picture the silence after their first honest sentence, wondering whether that pause would feel terrifying or freeing. There are moments when they wait for you to appear online, telling themselves they only want to say something casual. Yet beneath that simple opening is a much larger intention. They want to know whether this connection can move beyond hints, pauses, and carefully controlled conversations. The Four of Wands can symbolically point toward an invitation, a meeting A message that opens a door or a sudden change in the emotional atmosphere between two people. It does not promise an exact event or date, but it shows a growing desire to create a safer place for honesty. An ordinary reminder may be what weakens their restraint. They hear a song connected to you. They pass somewhere you once mentioned. They see two people laughing together and suddenly imagine what it would feel like to share that kind of ease with you. In that moment, waiting no longer feels wise. It feels like standing outside a home they are afraid to enter. What makes this card important is that their heart is not only choosing attraction, it is choosing the possibility of belonging. They imagine conversations without tension, quiet evenings without pretending, and the relief of no longer hiding what your presence means to them. Their voice is still nervous, but it is beginning to recognize that honesty might not destroy the connection. It might finally give the connection somewhere real to stand. Before they step across that threshold, however, they are still searching for a sign. Not a dramatic declaration, but some indication that there could be room for them in your life. That search for a place beside you brings the Ten of Pentacles into the reading, revealing what they have truly been watching for. Psychologically, the Ten of Pentacles speaks of belonging, stability, acceptance, and the structures people imagine when they wonder whether a connection could survive beyond private emotion. This younger person has been paying close attention to the smallest details. They remember a sentence you may have forgotten saying. They replay the expression on your face when a conversation became more personal. They notice whether your tone softens around them, whether you respond differently when they pull away, and whether your eye contact lingers for 1 second longer than necessary. They may reread old conversations not simply to feel close to you, but to search for meaning between the lines. A warm message becomes evidence they examine from every angle. A slower response makes them question everything. They may revisit your profile and wonder whether there is room in the life you have already built for someone younger, someone still finding their place, someone who may not fit the expectations people have for you. The Ten of Pentacles also brings family history and social approval into their private thoughts. They imagine how the people around you might react. They wonder whether your world is too established for them to enter without creating disruption. They ask themselves whether your kindness reflects genuine attraction, or whether you simply make everyone feel safe. That uncertainty is why they have been watching more carefully than speaking. What they are looking for is not permission to cross a boundary. They are looking for reassurance that honesty would not destroy the respect between you. They notice whether you remain present when they reveal something vulnerable. They remember whether you have ever defended an unconventional choice spoken about age without judgment, or made them feel that maturity is measured by character rather than years. Their private questions are becoming harder to silence. Could you genuinely choose someone younger? Would telling you the truth make you uncomfortable? Could one vulnerable sentence change the entire connection and remove the place they already hold in your life? The Ten of Pentacles shows why their feelings have become so serious. They are not only wondering whether you desire them, they are wondering whether they could belong beside you openly, naturally, and without pretending to be someone else. But all this careful observation has not given them certainty. Every hopeful sign can still be explained away, and every doubt can still be challenged by another memory. Instead of freeing them, their search for proof has brought them to an emotional edge. At that edge, the Fool appears, exposing the conflict between the life they can control and the truth they may have to risk everything to express. Psychologically, the Fool represents the tension between caution and emotional risk. It is the part of someone that longs to step forward before every question has been answered, while another part keeps staring at the edge and imagining everything that could go wrong. This younger person can see two very different futures. In one, they finally tell you the truth and discover that the connection was never one-sided. They imagine the relief of hearing that you have noticed the same pull, the same pauses, and the same unspoken meaning beneath your conversations. In the other future, they speak too soon, misread your warmth, and lose the closeness they have been trying so carefully to protect. That is why they remain suspended between hope and fear. They think about the age difference, the timing, and the questions other people might ask. They imagine friends telling them to be realistic. They imagine family members questioning their judgment. More painfully, they wonder whether you might see them as too inexperienced to understand what they are feeling. But the Fool reveals that outside judgment is not their greatest obstacle. Their real struggle is the demand for absolute certainty before they allow themselves to take an emotional risk. They want unmistakable proof that you feel the same way. They want the perfect moment, the perfect opening, and words so carefully chosen that rejection becomes impossible. Those conditions keep changing. When the right moment appears, they decide the setting is wrong. When you offer warmth, they wonder whether you are only being kind. When they finally form the words, they convince themselves to wait until they feel braver. Their mind keeps moving the starting line because certainty feels safer than vulnerability. Yet their heart does not follow those rules. It chooses you during quiet mornings, distracted afternoons, and evenings when they promise themselves they will let go. It chooses you when they imagine speaking and when they decide to remain silent. No matter how many arguments their mind creates, their emotions return to the same possibility. Silence once felt like protection. Now it feels like choosing regret before anything has even happened. The fool suggests they are beginning to understand that no meaningful connection comes with a guarantee. At some point, honesty requires stepping forward without knowing exactly where the path will lead. But before they can do that, they must decide whether their feelings deserve to be taken seriously. Justice enters at precisely this point, asking them to stop judging the connection by appearances and begin weighing what is emotionally true. Psychologically, justice represents honesty, balance, responsibility, and the moment when someone must stop bending the evidence to support the answer they wish were easier. This younger person has tried to place every reason for leaving on one side of the scale. The age difference, the timing, the opinions of family or friends, the possibility that your lives may appear too different from the outside. They have repeated these concerns so often that they almost sound like facts. But every time they weigh them against what they actually experience with you, the balance shifts again. They remember a shared laugh that felt effortless. They remember a small act of kindness you offered without asking for anything in return. On difficult evenings, they may return to an old message because your words still make them feel understood. Even during ordinary routines while making coffee, driving home, or completing some forgettable task, their thoughts return to the way your presence quiets something restless inside them. Justice shows that they are beginning to judge this connection by its substance rather than its appearance. They ask themselves whether age matters more than respect, whether outside approval matters more than emotional safety. They wonder whether a relationship that looks conventional is automatically more sincere than one that asks two people to think for themselves. Trying to detach has only made the contrast clearer. Without contact, something feels missing. With you, they feel more open, more honest, and less pressured to perform. You may awaken a softer part of them that does not appear easily around other people. A part that wants to speak without editing every feeling and exist without constantly proving its maturity. They are also imagining what fairness would look like for both of you. Not a dramatic escape from reality, but a connection where neither person is reduced to an age or role or an expectation. They picture quiet mornings, familiar jokes, errands that become enjoyable simply because you are beside them, and peaceful evenings where silence feels comfortable instead of loaded with everything left unsaid. Those ordinary images matter because they reveal seriousness beneath the attraction. Their heart keeps choosing you because this does not feel like fantasy to them. It feels like a truth they are becoming responsible for acknowledging. Yet accepting the truth does not automatically make someone brave enough to reveal it. There is still something they are holding on to, something they believe they must protect. That instinct to preserve the connection brings forward the Four of Pentacles, showing why their restraint has been both an expression of care and a barrier to intimacy. Psychologically, this card speaks of holding tightly to what feels valuable, protecting what matters, and fearing the loss of something that has already become important before it has even been fully claimed. This younger person may appear controlled around you because they are trying to contain the depth of their feelings. They do not want to seem impulsive, immature, or carried away by attraction. Instead, they hold back, measure their words, and protect the connection from anything that might make it feel unstable. But beneath that restraint is a quiet truth. They have already given this bond a permanent place in their inner world. When they think of you, they do not primarily think about age. They think about the way you listen without rushing them. They remember how your presence can steady a conversation and make vulnerability feel less dangerous. They notice that you offer warmth without trying to control what they should feel or how quickly they should reveal it. That emotional safety is rare for them, and it is one of the reasons they are so afraid of losing what already exists. The Four of Pentacles can sometimes show someone holding on too carefully. This person may be protecting the connection so intensely that they have prevented it from growing. They want partnership, but they fear that naming the bond could disturb its balance. They want to stand beside you, yet they hesitate because they do not want you to mistake their feelings for rebellion, dependence, or a need to be rescued. What they imagine is much simpler and more serious than that. They picture conversations that flow without either person performing. They imagine comfortable silence checking in after difficult days, and knowing that both of you can remain fully yourselves. They want to feel chosen without being possessed, supported without being managed, and loved without being reduced to the difference in your ages. There may have been small moments they interpreted as mutual recognition, a pause that felt charged, a look that carried more tenderness than expected, a conversation that continued long after it could have ended. They cannot know with certainty what those moments meant to you, but they have held on to them because each one suggested that this connection might contain more than private longing. The Four of Pentacles reveals that their heart keeps choosing you because it already considers the connection precious. But holding something tightly is not the same as allowing it to become real. Recognizing the value of a bond is one thing. Choosing to live in alignment with that recognition is something else entirely. The Lovers now steps forward, transforming the question from, "What do I feel?" into, "What am I prepared to choose?" Psychologically, the Lovers is not only about attraction. It represents alignment, responsibility, and the point where someone can no longer divide what they feel from the way they are living. This younger person has spent a long time treating silence as the careful option. They believed distance would reduce the intensity, restore perspective, and return everything to something easier to manage. But every period without you has done the opposite. It has shown them what remains when distraction disappears. Your absence does not erase the connection. It makes the shape of it clearer. They may have begun reviewing the decisions that brought them here. Every message left unsent. Every opportunity they allowed to pass. Every moment they acted indifferent because honesty felt too exposing. They are starting to ask whether caution has protected them or whether fear has simply been choosing their life on their behalf. The Lovers brings that question into focus. This is no longer only about whether they feel drawn to you. It is about whether they can continue living in conflict with their own emotional truth. Their heart has already made the same choice repeatedly. It chooses you when they try to be practical. It chooses you when they imagine someone else. It chooses you after they promise themselves they will finally move on. Now their conscious mind is beginning to acknowledge what their heart has known for some time. They may imagine several months passing with nothing changing. The thought does not bring relief, it creates a sharper fear. They picture you becoming more distant, meeting someone else, or quietly deciding that their inconsistency meant they never cared. Suddenly, judgment from friends or family feels less frightening than the possibility of realizing they abandoned something meaningful without ever allowing it to become real. Their inner language is changing. Where they once told themselves, "I should forget this," another thought is becoming stronger. "I need to know the truth." That does not mean every fear has disappeared. It means regret is beginning to outweigh embarrassment. The Lovers asks for a choice made with open eyes. Not an impulsive leap, and not a fantasy that ignores the complications, but a willingness to stop hiding behind those complications. This person may be reaching the point where silence feels less like patience and more like betrayal of what they genuinely feel. And once that realization takes hold, the old way of coping cannot continue unchanged. Death follows the Lovers as the end of that old emotional pattern, not the end of the connection itself. Before the image creates fear, understand what it represents here. Psychologically, death is the ending of a pattern that can no longer carry someone forward. It shows this younger person reaching the point where the version of them that hides, delays, and pretends is beginning to fall away. For a long time, they believed they needed to explain everything perfectly. They imagined giving you every reason for their distance, every fear connected to the age difference, and every thought that kept them silent. Their private confession became so complicated that it felt impossible to begin. But something is changing. They are realizing that honesty does not need a perfect speech. It only needs a true first sentence. The message they once drafted may have been long, careful, and filled with explanations. Now it may be becoming shorter, more direct, less concerned with sounding composed and more concerned with finally being understood. A rehearsed phone call may lose the elaborate beginning they practiced. An invitation may appear simple on the surface, but its real purpose is to create a moment where the conversation can go deeper. Death suggests that the communication may begin by ending the silence in a small way. A casual text, a question about how you have been, a request to talk, an invitation to meet somewhere familiar. The opening may not immediately reveal everything because they are still watching to see whether the emotional door remains open. But beneath those ordinary words is a decision they have been resisting for a long time. They want you to understand that their distance was not indifference. It was fear. They want to admit that you matter more than their behavior has shown. Most of all, they want to stop acting as though this connection can remain unnamed without changing them. This card can symbolically reflect a text, a phone call, a face-to-face conversation, or one honest question that changes the direction of everything that follows. It does not guarantee how or when that moment occurs. It reveals that the old method of coping is losing its power. Silence no longer feels sustainable because pretending now requires more effort than truth. Death marks the end of emotional avoidance, but clear words are not the hardest part of what comes next. The hardest part is allowing you to see how vulnerable they truly are. That vulnerability gathers heat and movement through the Knight of Wands, showing how honesty may arrive before they have time to make it perfect. Psychologically, this card represents emotion gathering enough courage to move before fear can create another reason to wait. This younger person may have spent weeks rehearsing gentle words, only to reach you with a sudden message, an unexpected invitation, or a burst of honesty they can no longer contain. Their confidence may appear stronger than they actually feel. They might speak quickly, use humor to soften the moment, or begin with something casual before revealing why they truly reached out. Beneath that bold approach is someone deeply afraid of looking naive. They worry that admitting how much they miss you will make them seem inexperienced. They fear you will hear their sincerity and mistake it for impulse, but this feeling has survived too many attempts to suppress it. They want to admit that your absence affects them. They want you to know that their inconsistent behavior was not a lack of interest. At times they pulled away because the connection became too real, then returned because distance felt worse than exposure. Every retreat was followed by the same realization. Their heart had not changed direction. The Knight of Wands is often associated with passion. But here that passion is not only physical, it is the urgency of wanting to be known before the opportunity disappears. This person is drawn to your warmth, but also to the way you carry yourself. They notice your patience, emotional steadiness, and ability to remain open without losing your boundaries. Around you, they feel accepted without feeling controlled. They do not reduce you to an age or category. When they think about you, they remember the feeling of being understood. They remember how a conversation with you could make them feel more confident and more exposed at the same time. That combination is precisely why they have struggled to remain distant. Their confession may not sound polished. It could arrive through a direct question, an impulsive call, or a message sent before they have time to delete it. Yet behind that sudden movement is something serious. They may be trying to say that you matter, that they have missed you, and that pretending otherwise has become impossible. Their heart chose long before their courage was ready. Now their voice is gathering speed, trying to catch up with a truth that has already traveled far ahead. But even momentum can be interrupted by one final pause. Not because the feeling has weakened, but because they are trying to understand what speaking will require from them. The Hanged Man closes the reading by revealing that their final step is not greater control, but the surrender of control itself. Psychologically, this card represents surrender perspective and the moment when someone stops trying to control every possible outcome. It does not show this younger person abandoning the connection. It shows them releasing the belief that they must understand everything before they can be honest. For so long, they have remained suspended between feeling and action. They watched, waited, reconsidered, and tried to protect what existed by refusing to disturb it. They believed that if they stayed still long enough, the emotion might fade or the answer might reveal itself without requiring vulnerability. But the pause has changed them. It has forced them to see that silence is not neutral. Silence is also a decision. The Hanged Man suggests they are beginning to view the age difference differently. What once looked like proof that the connection was too complicated may now look like one challenge among many. What once felt like emotional immaturity may now reveal itself as genuine fear. They are recognizing that courage does not mean feeling certain. It means being truthful while uncertainty still exists. Their heart keeps choosing you because every attempt to see this connection from another angle brings them back to the same emotional center. They have imagined walking away. They have pictured remaining only friends, keeping everything unspoken, or allowing time to quietly separate you. None of those possibilities gives them peace. The truth remains even when they turn it upside down and examine it from every direction. This does not guarantee a message remove free will or ask you to ignore your own boundaries. It shows a person approaching the point where holding back may no longer feel honest. If they speak, the words may come after a long pause. They may admit that they needed time to understand themselves. They may explain that their distance was an attempt to gain control over feelings that refuse to disappear. What matters now is that they are no longer asking only how to avoid rejection. They are asking what it would cost them to remain silent forever. That question changes the balance inside them. The Hanged Man closes this reading with surrender, not defeat. This younger person may finally stop fighting the truth long enough to give it a voice. Because when a heart has chosen the same truth often enough, silence eventually stops being protection and becomes the doorway through which truth must pass.